So I have some news for you because apparently clean beauty is out and yes, dirty beauty is now in. But when I say dirty, I don't mean dirty as in unhygienic or careless, of course. Instead, I mean dirty as in soil under your nails and wild botanicals and raw infusions and regenerative farming. Because dirty beauty, as you'll hear my guest today tell you, is about vitality. It's about working with nature, not against it. It's about formulations that are elemental and raw and alive and rooted in the richness of the soil and the cycles of the earth. And doesn't that sound amazing? Now, for years, clean beauty has dominated the conversation, promising safety and simplicity and transparency. But in the rush to purify, some brands arguably have perhaps sterilized a bit. And not just stripped away certain ingredients either, but perhaps they've also removed complexity and richness and maybe even the life in the formulation itself. So my guest today asks a different question. What if the future of skincare isn't found in the lab, but is in fact found in the soil? What if the path forward is raw and regenerative and radically elemental? So if you've ever questioned whether clean beauty has perhaps become too sanitized or too surface level, then this episode will open the door to something deeper and perhaps, dare I say it, even something dirtier. So make sure you settle in for the full episode. Welcome to Green Beauty Conversations, in which I challenge the beauty industry to become sustainable, champion independent and green beauty, and encourage you to join me in making beauty better. I'm your host, Lorraine Dallmeier. I'm a chartered environmentalist, biologist, and the CEO of award-winning online organic cosmetic formulation school, Formula Botanica. We have tens of thousands of students in over 190 countries around the world who study with us to become organic beauty formulators and entrepreneurs. Visit our website at formulabotanica.com to try our free online formulation course. And if you want to be the first person to know what's happening in green beauty, make sure you subscribe to this podcast in your favorite podcast app. So in today's episode, I'm joined by Stephen Smith, who's a pioneer in premium regenerative goods with a richly diverse background that spans fine art and agriculture and business. A solo motorcycle journey through South America sparked his fascination with farming and biodynamic winemaking, eventually drawing him to the vineyards of Napa before returning back to Colorado to become Director of Business Development for the first organic distillery and biodynamic farm in the state, based on a 90,000-acre cattle ranch. Once he was there, Stephen deepened his understanding of large-scale land stewardship, animal husbandry, and holistic agricultural systems. Since then, he's launched one of the first biodynamic and regenerative wellness companies, continues to run a boutique cattle operation, and consults for emerging regenerative brands. And today, he's the founder of Newturn, the first clinically proven skincare ingredient complex designed to revitalize both soil and skin, supporting rural US economies, regenerative supply chains, and whole plant formulations. Hi, Stephen. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Spring is starting to finally show up here in Northeast Oregon, so we're thinking about the farming season and summer ahead.
Awesome. Well, we're going to be talking about some of that, actually, so I'm looking forward to that. But before we get into that, could you please introduce yourself for our listeners?
Sure. My name is Stephen Smith. I'm the founder and CEO of Newturn, which is made by Woodhorse Labs. And I've got a background in regenerative agriculture, wellness, winemaking, ranching, and we are bringing this 5-in-1 booster to the beauty and skincare space. I'm quite excited about it.
Amazing. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. What does Newturn make and sell?
So Newturn is made by, like I said, Woodhorse Labs. That's our botanical infusion lab. And Newturn is a proprietary blend, a complex of regeneratively grown, biodynamically grown, organically grown botanicals, oils that really, it's our kind of offering as a 6-in-1 booster so that you can replace hyaluronic acid, glycolic acid, resveratrol, retinol, things like that, potentially with very raw, minimally processed botanical ingredients. So it's really, it's an offering to kind of step outside of some of the isolates and chemicals to go into estate-grown botanicals.
Amazing. So just for the listeners, for complete clarity, this is an ingredient that you can include in formulations or hopefully in the future buy that has been incorporated into formulations. Is that correct?
That's right. It's an ingredient booster or ingredient complex that is going into some of our partner formulations to really you get that efficacy coming from regenerative land.
Amazing. So what inspired you to start Newturn?
Well, the short-ish story is my path through regenerative agriculture led me into wellness and started really diving deep with some teammates into botanical infusions. And fast forward 8 years through my wellness company to a surf trip in Baja and Mexico, that is, and a little too much sun. I couldn't come in. I was having a lot of fun. I really felt like I needed something to quench that sun exposure and to kind of neutralize it. And I knew that some of the botanicals and the ingredients that we've been working with would do that. So I started tinkering around with blending some of these maybe controversial, but I found highly effective compounds to create something that would neutralize the skin. So I put it together after a bit of experimentation, contacted some folks that are formulators, know a bit more about this than I do, and we landed on this Newturn complex. And then we did a clinical trial, which, funny enough, brought up a lot more information than what I had originally created this for. So yeah, we're excited.
Sounds like you've been on quite a journey. Well, what sort of extracts are in the complex that you've created? What sort of plants are in there?
Yeah. So one thing, notable differentiation is that we don't use any extracts or isolates. We are really committed to raw botanical infusions. So not that there's anything wrong with those types of ingredients, but in our case, Newturn is comprised of a couple key botanicals. One is calendula. The other is a type of hemp leaf, mostly, and that's not CBD, that's not THC, it's CBGA. And so we're using this different variety, and then that with the way we do our stacking infusion, we have some custom percolating infusion equipment. So, traditionally you would put botanicals in a jar, you would add oil, you would macerate, essentially shake, strain. What we're doing through these columns and cycling of oil, we're able to stack potency by pressing the biomass or the botanicals and then adding to that same batch of oil more plant material. So we're able to get a really high potency infusion. We're also using ozone. The version of Newturn that was clinically tested had a little bit of tallow, although we do have a vegan version. And then we have a direct source for regeneratively grown jojoba here in the United States. So we're really keen on partnering with people we know, understanding the estate, understanding the farm, and that rural economy to the best of our ability.
Those sound like some beautiful plants. So where do you source them?
So most of the botanicals come from here in Oregon. In fact, I have to go talk to one of my farmers this week, and they're less than 2 miles from Woodhorse Labs where we make all of this. So that's really exciting for us. The jojoba, just because of the nature of that plant growing in the desert, comes from Arizona. The ozonated olive oil is coming from the Midwest. And the tallow, which someday I'd love to use my cattle tallow, but that's a U.S. grass-fed organic product as well.
Wow. Sounds beautiful. And how nice that you know exactly where everything's coming from as well. That must feel quite satisfying, actually, to bring it all together like that. So where did the name Newturn come from?
That was an interesting process. 2 of my teammates are really well-versed on the brand side. One of them built agency, was a part of Curology. The other worked with L'Oreal and Estee Lauder on brand positioning. And honestly, we went down that path of mixing botanoderm, all these kind of keywords that ended up being very ubiquitous. And I think no one would remember floriderm because it sounds like it already exists. And we landed on Newturn because we feel like it's a reference to regeneration, a new path forward, cell turnover, restoration, nutrient density, nature. There's a lot in this word that we made up that we hope can evoke some of those things with our customers. And at the end of the day, it wasn't one of those things that I just was in love with right away. And I had to remind myself about so many brands in the world that gain value through time, and they gain value through association and storytelling. I'm not blown away by the word Target as a brand or Airbnb, that none of those resonate, but I think we can all agree that they add value in time. So it's growing on me, and I love it more than I did a year and a half ago. So.
Well, let's talk about regeneration a little bit, because that comes back a lot in your story and also in the big mission behind what you're trying to achieve. What does regeneration mean to you in relation to the complex that you've created?
It's near and dear to my heart. I've been working in regenerative and biodynamic agriculture for almost 16 years. And something that I've realized in the last few years is that although I've been extremely focused on the agricultural side of regeneration, the principles of regeneration, when allowed, can transcend into every aspect of your business and way of living. In fact, one of the core principles of regenerative agriculture is vitality through biodiversity. So no monocrops, no isolation, really leaning into nature's tendency to create life through diversity and ecological activity. And so the irony in my revelation was that if I'm not treating all aspects or considering all aspects of my life and my business through a regenerative lens, then I'm not actually holistically considering, my place on earth and my time. So to kind of bring it back from the agricultural side, when compounds are farmed or created, whether they end up being a chamomile extract or a tea or jojoba oil, or in our case, calendula, they can be farmed in a way that is a bit more extractive, is dependent on synthetics. And in our opinion, in the long term, well, it's pretty obvious if you're paying attention, can degrade the soil and the land. And so conversely to that, regenerative biodynamic farming, which is organic so it's beyond just organic, it really aims to farm in a way that not only produces the most nutrient-dense, expressive versions of those plants, but also in a way that is tuned into reciprocity. So building vitality in the soil and giving back. And a way that happens is through biodiversity. So growing different crops. Animal integration is huge. So regardless of whether you eat meat or not, it doesn't matter. It's since the beginning of time, growing plants and having animals involved has been the natural way. So our farms are using crop rotation, rotational grazing, animal impact, essentially to build vitality in the soil, because the healthier the soil, the more effective the product. That's our belief, and that's our bottom line. And I think we can look at the food system and find a lot of parallels to what has been happening and what we believe will be happening in the beauty and skincare space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've already hinted at the fact that modern crops might be slightly less nutrient dense than they used to be. So you talked about the loss of vitality in plants potentially affecting the performance of skincare ingredients. How does that come out? I mean, you mentioned you've done clinical trials. Have you seen any sign of that?
It's one of those things that it's like, if you know, if you go to the farmer's market, at least here in the US, and you get a biodynamic strawberry versus a big, spongy, flavorless strawberry from a conventional farm, first of all, it's trust your body, right? And so if you take that same thinking as the foundation of what's inspired this path, we're really excited to also back all this with science and data. And so the first thing we've done, which was a huge step for us, was a clinical trial. And we had 30 participants of varying skin types, and they were basically grading or using Newturn as a booster in their existing routine. We had them added at 5%, and the results were outstanding. And these are self-assessment results. We also had a dermatologist skin grading that really brought that kind of objective scientific backing to say their skin health is improved. We have that as our first kind of nugget of science to kind of back the thinking that nature knows, and we're just starting on this path. So we feel as we continue to gain clients and proof of concept and market presence, we will continue to invest in more research.
That makes perfect sense. Do you think there's a link between environmental degradation and our skin health as well? Because the same issues that are damaging our soil, for instance, are also potentially harming our skin.
Well, the soil is the skin of the earth, and we believe there is a correlation. It's all connected, right? Without getting too woo-woo, I don't have any, specific data to back that point, but our overall physical health, especially in our country, is dropping significantly, and we have less than 1% of the farmed land in the United States is organic. a fraction of 1%. So if you think that over 99% of all farmed land is full of Roundup, herbicides, pesticides, chemicals, and you can look at the health trends of this country, and I can't speak for the rest of the world, but processed foods and chemical farming are killing the soil and us. We're excited about this opportunity to vote in another direction. Again, we're not here to vilify, we're just here to give an option, and the response is really exciting. But I do feel from the consumer, from the research, and from my teammates' background, there tends to be a trade-off. Either you're voting for efficacy at all costs, and you're using whatever it is. And I'm pretty new to this industry, and that's why I call on such great teammates. Or you're using a natural product, and you could be potentially sacrificing efficacy. And our hope is that we can try to do both, because we believe and know that there is a place for both.
I totally get it. There has been some very interesting research actually over the last 10 years or so coming out about the effects of pollution on the skin. Particularly the International Journal on Cosmetic Science has published quite a bit. So you may be onto something there. There may well be some interesting links between pollution on the earth and pollution on ourselves. Now, one concept that you're a fan of, which we talked about before we came onto the podcast, is this idea of dirty beauty. And when I first heard this, I laughed out loud because, of course, it's allegedly the polar opposite of clean beauty, I guess. But what does this term dirty beauty mean to you?
I'm glad you got a kick out of it. We try to have fun. Yeah, so I coined that a couple months ago in a conversation with my small team, half joking, and then we kind of pulled on that thread a little and realized, well, this is interesting. This could spur some fun conversation, and it is today. Going back to soil health, my time in the wine world, and I think anyone that enjoys delicious, high-quality wine could understand that the higher level of farming and attention to detail in the vineyard, the more minimal, hands-off, artistic processing creates a real beautiful expression of that place. And so if we think about that wine parallel, another parallel is orange juice. You could have emergency powder and water. You could have fresh squeezed organic orange juice. Take your pick.
No brainer, right?
Yeah, we think so. If you go back to soil health, the more degraded the soil, the more you end up having to amend with chemicals to try to get the nutrients in the plant to, it's like steroids. They're not getting that natural nutrient input. So we figure the dirtier the soil, the healthier the soil, the cleaner the skin, the healthier the skin. I understand the intentions of the clean beauty movement. I feel like it's unregulated. But we started looking behind the layers and I thought, is that really a clean ingredient? I mean, I don't know. And maybe having fresh eyes coming into this industry, y'all are the professionals, but my look at it was, that doesn't sound that clean. And where does it come from? Hyaluronic acid's coming from chicken parts often and from China and India. That's why not flowers from organic regenerative U.S. farms? So that's just a playful expression to really make people think. The healthier the soil, the healthier my skin. And we really want to drive that narrative home and give folks that option to use Newturn as that chassis to make those claims and to be a part of the movement. So we'll see where it goes, but we're having fun with it for now.
Yeah, no, I loved it. Yeah. I thought it was very clever, particularly as regeneration is starting to become a topic that the beauty industry is talking about, which is good. However, there is a large part of the beauty industry that is going hard into biotech, is going much more into efficacy, as you say. I mean, I spoke to someone the other day and they were like, yeah, I don't buy natural skincare, I only buy scientific skincare. So how do we convince brands and consumers that raw and elemental can still be effective as well?
Well, I like that you said elemental, and I also like that you said convince, because I think I'm done convincing. And I say that only because I've been working in regenerative biodynamic for so long. And when I was selling biodynamic spirits 10, 12 years ago, folks used to joke about dancing around the moon, around a fire. And there's this kind of aspect to it where people really have been groomed to only believe in science. So we're here for it. We're here to support it, but I'm not on a mission to convince necessarily. However, I do think that building a bridge and a path and remaining open to these conversations is important, and it starts with those clinical trials. because, there's a lot of folks that they believe in biodynamic, they believe in regenerative, and they're already sold when they come to the website or we have a phone call. And that's great because we want to keep expanding the movement. But to expand the movement, we have to be open to building those bridges. So I never want to tell someone they're doing something wrong. I just want to show that this works. It's kind of the tip of the spear, or the top of the pyramid is it works. And then below that is the nutrients, where it comes from, and then being a part of the regenerative movement and healing soil. So I think that in time, just like in the food, again, I keep referencing kind of the food movement because that's where I've spent a lot of time. You're seeing people go into organic, you're seeing people go into regenerative, and people want more transparency. There's a lot more work being put into nutrient density, because if you have 2 strawberries, again, as an example, or 2 heads of lettuce, and one is, 40% more, if you can't prove to a consumer that they're getting 60% more nutrients for a 40% price increase, then it's a hard sell unless they're into it. So I think not only food, it's happening in food, but skincare, we need to show this is 5 ingredients in one for the same price or less than if you added all the ingredients I mentioned earlier. So I do think we can't be dismissive of research. We can't be dismissive of clinical trials and data. And we've had such amazing results. I think it was 99% of the participants agreed that Newturn improved their skin health and appearance. It was pretty much unanimous.
Wow.
And then everything else from hydration, texture, brightness, clarity, reduced inflammation, and tiredness was in the 83% and up. So it can work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So,
well, let's talk about those constituents a little bit more, because you've chosen hemp as a cornerstone botanical in there, but not for its CBD, not for its THC, which doesn't tend to get used in skincare much anyway. What drew you to hemp, though, and how do you see this evolving in skincare?
We have our challenges because of stigma and antiquated regulation, although the variety we chose, it's kind of like if everyone's been drinking Cabernet and we chose Pinot Noir. We just picked a different variety, a different tomato, a different grape, a different botanical. It's known for its anti-inflammatory benefits, scientifically proven. There is so much in this plant that is helpful for the skin. If you do a deep dive, and you probably know more than most of us about beta-caryophyllene, that's a terpenoid that exists in black pepper. It's a volatile compound that is great for the skin. This plant has chlorophyll, lots of polyphenols, fatty acids, gallic acid. It has so many constituents that I think have historically been overlooked, or they've been over-processed out. So it's a combination of not only using ingredients that haven't really been harnessed and embraced in this context, and the way our proprietary way of making this compound is really inclusive of micronutrients that would otherwise get disregarded through an isolation or an extract process. So it works. I put it on my face after being in the sun for hours and never peeled. It's amazing. So we're hoping folks continue to stay open-minded, to what works.
Sounds like you're onto something there. So after 15 years or 16 years, I think you said, in regenerative agriculture and wine and what's the biggest lesson that you found you've learned about plants and people and the way that we care for both of them through regeneration?
Oh, goodness, that's an expansive question.
It is.
I appreciate that. I think that we increasingly live in a world of immediate gratification and control. And when you devote yourself to regeneration, regenerative agriculture, and being a steward of nature's gifts and expressions, you're constantly humbled by that timeline and those cycles. So the way I live is off grid. I built this cabin with my hands. My businesses I've built with my hands. And I often have these existential crises of feeling like a madman. And yet I'm consistently reminded of the gifts of nature through this dedication to this path. And I think it's a humbling path, and it's humbling lessons. So many of my friends walk into their home and they turn on the lights, they turn on the water, they order stuff through Uber Eats, They're in a world that, sounds amazing. Honestly, I'm 20 minutes from town and there's one restaurant. So, there's so much in this modern way of living that has kind of fractured us from natural cycles. And if we can offer even a glimpse or small reconnection to nature through product or through being involved in a movement, I think it's good for us. I think people are hungry for something authentic and for reconnection. That's my off the cuff reaction.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So I guess as we wrap up this interview, I have one sort of more technical question for our listeners, because some of the listeners will be formulators or they will have indie brands and they'll be thinking, gosh, this complex sounds great. What are your minimum order quantities?
Yeah, good question. So typically right now with a contract manufacturer, we're looking at about 10 kilos. To be honest with you, we're in our first year of partnering with brands. I want to work with people that are excited. That's the bottom line. So, reach out, and we're sending out samples of, 50 or 100 grams for folks to just get used to it and play with it and enjoy it. And we can talk about it. I would say it's a case by case basis. We want to support small, excited, inspired, passionate formulators and brands just like we are.
Yeah.
So
love that.
Definitely reach out.
And we will obviously include all of your details with this podcast as well, so people will be able to reach out easily. So the final question I have for you is, what's next? What's next for Newturn? You haven't been going for that long. There must be plans on the horizon. What's happening?
Well, we just applied for our own INCI designation, and that was quite a bit of work, and we've got a couple months to wait on that. We have this vegan version, which, we're sending out to folks who are committed to that claim. Newturn is the hero complex of our botanical lab. So just for a little more context, Woodhorse is where we make everything. And we've had some interest from folks that are using Newturn, but they want us to make a custom chamomile stacked infusion. So I don't want to dilute the message and the focus on this hero compound, but I also want to be able to use our capabilities in ways that help people expand their line. So that's something we're having conversations in tandem with Newturn around single variety botanical infusions, because again, we have these two pieces of equipment that are very different than if you were to do it in a jar. We've done tests. We did one test and we got 10x the nutrient profile through our process versus a single jar infusion. So that's promising because we're stacking, right? And we can do it in a way that's relatively efficient, but still works. So I think for Newturn, it's continuing to partner with great brands. We're coming out soon with a tallow balm with Sky High Farms. They're based out of New York. That's launching soon, and continuing to listen to our partners and see what they need and grow together.
Sounds like you have some exciting plans on the horizon, and I look forward to seeing where Newturn goes. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, where can they do so?
So my name is Stephen, Stephen, at newturn.co, or simply go to the website and fill out the form at the bottom, and we'll get back to you. Newturn.co.
Fantastic. We will include all of that information with the show notes. Go and check out Newturn. Go and see what their amazing complex looks like. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, Stephen. It's been really lovely chatting to you.
Thank you for your time.
I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Has the concept of dirty beauty resonated with you? Leave us a comment on our social channels, as both the Formula Botanica team and I love hearing from you. And if you want to hear some more episodes about the topics we discussed today, please do delve back into the podcast archives. So some great examples include episode 231, in which I interviewed Dr. Sally Goldstone of Shalick Skincare on what biodiversity truly means for the beauty industry. Or check out episode 213, in which I spoke to Ruth Andrade, who's the Earth Care strategy lead at Lush, about the way that they're approaching regeneration in beauty. There is a wealth of information in our old episodes, and I do encourage you to go back and listen to them. So thank you for joining Stephen and I for this latest episode of Green Beauty Conversations. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do leave us a 5-star review so that other people can enjoy these conversations too. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever your favorite podcast app is, and stay tuned for the next episode. Follow Formula Botanica at Formula Botanica on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Pinterest, LinkedIn. We're everywhere. And come and give me a follow at Lorraine Dallmeier on Instagram and LinkedIn too. Visit our website at formulabotanica.com and sign up for our free online formulation course today.